And okay, as you may have read in the announcement, we invited you to share your stories of community transformation. The background is, maybe we close the door because it's less noisy. The background is that we created a kind of a bank of community stories way back in 2020, originally because of the lockdown, where we realized that a lot of new and creative ideas are coming up during the lockdown. And then we realized as a group of people from the US and Europe that the idea of community storytelling is maybe a good idea to enhance the idea of community and community psychology. And what I want to give, what I want to give you is a short introduction. Here's Brad and Leslie. We are the part of the group, but we are not all of them, so that there are more people. Monica, right? And I'd like to show you as an introduction just why are community stories in oral history important for community psychology, and they're creating something which I call a tacit sense of community. So it's kind of a background feeling, you could say, in a way. And let me check, there's a new, yeah, it works. And in Europe, we have a kind of a new program of the European Union, which says, well, community stories are, among others, part of our cultural heritage. And was kind of an interesting move, because they say, well, there's a cultural heritage which you can see in buildings. Naples is full of cultural heritages. Italy is full of cultural heritages in terms of building, but they made an important move, in my opinion. They said, based on this Faro Convention of Inspired Experiences, they say, well, it's important to save our cultural heritage, which is also intangible, which is not really like a building you can go to or a museum or something like that, but it's oral history. People, it's even not written down, it's even not documented. And that's, I think, is an important step, which is maybe important for community psychology as well, because if we go elsewhere, we have this same kind of things, similar kind of things, and especially in indigenous groups, there's all kinds of cultural heritage based on community stories. And that is why we think there's more than just a creative reaction to a global crisis like the lockdown and the pandemic, because there's really a wealth of cultural heritage, a wealth of stories. And what we want to do is to keep them as a common memory, our collective memory, which is used in indigenous groups and cultures all the time, but we seem, as modern society, we seem to forget them in a way. And so that is a new thing. And one of the examples of cultural heritage is, has been collected by Stats Terkel. Stats Terkel used to be a famous, I guess, famous journalist, or what was he? So he was on a radio station in Chicago. Okay, oh, in Chicago. And he also had a number of books that were stories, one on working, one on, I can't remember all of them,
yeah, really documented. Oh, that's,
Yeah, but they don't get it if you. So just repeat it.
Right. Yes. Sorry about that. I apologize. So Studs Terkel was a Chicagoan, and he was famous for having a radio show, and would just be a very good interviewer and have people tell stories. But he also put together a number of books. One called Division Street America, and it was really just stories from different people, and rather than sort of fixing them up or we qualitatively code data, he just left the stories in their pure state. And and he had another one called Working, and I can't remember the other ones, but yeah, he was a really good person.
And that's another thing which is important for community building and community stories is food. So food is coming in because we are right in the middle of the lunchtime. So Congress organizers have been very kind to offer some food. So we have a break later and grab your food. Thank you very much. Perfect. Yeah, I think Studs Terkel is a perfect example of oral history and of the kind of stories we want to collect. Most of them are, of the stories are individual stories of individuals, but some of them are pointing somehow to community as well. So it would be worthwhile to do an analysis of his books or an evaluation of his books to find out community stories and stories about community transformation. And one of my favorite stories is the story of a 12-year-old girl in 1910. She used to work in a cigar factory in Cuba. And everybody knows Cuba has a lot of cigar factories. And this was not a really good working place in a way. So, but Cuba was in these times already, although this was not a socialist time, they already had some kind of self-organization among workers. So what they did in these cigar factories, they elected one of them to tell stories, to read something, to tell stories. So, so 50 people in this cigar factory, which you see on the pictures, they would roll cigars, and one person would read stories or tell stories. And they would read something from literature. So this 12-year-old girl is telling the story that she started to think about, well, what could I tell to those people? 12-year-old, the other ones were 30 or 40 or 50 or even more older. And and she decided, I just tell the stories I like. And so she read from newspapers, she read from books like really good literature like Flaubert or other literature which was fancy in these times. And so she contributed to the education of the workers in a way. And that was the reason. So you can see on the picture, they had a stall where the reader would sit. Sometimes they were older, but the story Studs Terkel is putting in is of a 12-year-old girl, and that's very fascinating. So, and she was telling the story to Studs Terkel when she was 89. So it was kind of a nice memory of her. But again, it's not only told story and but it created community among the workers as well. So it transformed this type of not very good working environment in a education situation or education setting. So that's one example. The other example I'd like to share with you is a current project, which is called the Narrative Project. It's from Canada, Nova Scotia. And people from the indigenous community in Nova Scotia got together and said, well, we need to tell how we thrive. That's the term, that's the title of this website. And they have a narrative story where they tell their stories, how they survive, how they thrive in their lives, and how they build community. And at the same time, they have a special, you see it up there, a special section about hosting. So hosting is an important thing, important feature in indigenous communities. And they have a special community with Gaelic people. So they were immigrants coming from Ireland and other places where they speak this special language of Gaelic, and they try to maintain their culture and reinvent their culture being Gaelic. And there is a special, in the meantime, a special section about food. So how they create food, how it's kind of the slow food movement as well. So this is another example which I'd like to show with you, and that's the type of stories, in a way, we are looking for the new bank and the idea of the community storytelling. So they don't have to be too complex, they don't have to be too creative, but they should show the idea of community stories. It's not individual stories, it's a little bit more. It's just one step further. And that's what we believe is really important for community psychology. Another thing I'd like to show you is close to my hometown, my home village. It's a piece of art. It's an art performance in a way. It's like an open air museum. So it's called Stoa. Stoa, the Stoics, have been a Greek ancient philosopher group, and they created these types of column halls. So they create, like in temples, they have these different columns, and the old Greek philosophers, they used this in order to think and to reflect and to what is the verb for philosophy? Philos. I like to, yeah. Well, philos is maybe a new type. Okay, that's philos next time. And an artist close to my hometown, he decided he always wanted to have this kind of column hall in his place, and he decided, let's bring together 121 artists from all from the globe. So there are artists from Japan, from the South Sea, so from the Hawaii, and all kind of places, US, Europe, anywhere. And each of these columns is telling a story as a piece of art. So you can stroll through this open hall and find your own story. And this is a particular story which I wanted to show you, which is has to do with community as well. It's the story of Haiti and France. Haiti used to be a French colony until 1876 or something like that. And then the people from Haiti wanted to have their own state, and they kind of started to bargain with France. How could we do that? And Haiti was the most important place for French slavery trading. So all the slaves which they stole from Africa, which they kind of tortured and things like that, they brought it to Haiti to sell it to the US and to other places. And France said in these times, okay, you can be independent, but we lose a lot of money because the slavery market is going down then, because we don't have a market anymore. So they decided they have to to pay back the loss of, the profit, the original profit. And Haiti, and that's the important part of the story, Haiti paid until the year of 1977. So until 1977, the French Republic, the modern French Republic, de Gaulle and all these modern, they took money from Haiti, and altogether it was 40 billion euros. So the people of Haiti paid 40 billion euros until 1977. There was the big earthquake, and then the French Republic decided, okay, it's done. It's kind of an awkward story, it's a strange story, but I think it's an important story. It's another type of story which shows how communities, how could I say, how communities cope with these kind of situations. And that is why we put it in the bank as well, because each column tells a different story. So that's the interesting part of that. So what we're going to do is we'd like to invite you to tell us our stories and also to develop something, and it's not funded yet, so it's still voluntary, to start something like a global research on community resilience and empowerment in global crisis. So collecting inspiring and transformative stories from different regions all over the place. Until now, we have about 100. And we didn't do advertisement or something like that. So we didn't tell any, we just started to collecting. And so people from South Africa, from Ghana, from all kind of places stopped in and told us their story, our stories. What we want to do also is try to find out, and that's maybe the research part, what are the patterns of success built in the stories? So that's the wealth which is in there. That's the important impact. So kind of try to evaluate, try to analyze this type of stories because they prove to be successful, and share the stories and inspire other regions. You could take this similar thing like how we thrive. You could do it in your region. You could do it in your way. So adapt it, steal the ideas in a way, in a positive way. And so that's, and share the patterns of community resilience and inspire others. That's like what I said. So what we're eager to do is listen to your stories, if you have some, and we are here to prepared, thanks to you, to have professional gear to do some video recording, if you dare to, so don't be shy. So just tell your story if you want to, and there's nothing wrong or nothing right, so it's just we are looking for stories we want to share and analyze, and these, because we believe that creative stories of community resilience show how to cope with local and global crisis. Stories transform and empower communities. That's the most important part. And so this is this is just an idea about what are the supporters and collaborators. So the number of supporters and collaborators are growing constantly. And we hope we can go on with that. And I just wanted to share with you our new website. This is a different computer, so I'm always kind of Ah, yeah, now I know how to do that. So this is, if I can start it. Oh, this is not a touchpad. That's the reason why. So we have a new website which you can't see too much. And I just wanted to show you a story which has been submitted by Leslie recently to show you the idea of the stories. So we have a lot of different stories. You can click on that and you have it on your paper as well. And this is the type of stories we are looking for. Is it okay if I? And I need some voice, some sound. Do we have sound? Okay.
That into real life and making real change for families in crisis. It all started in 2018 when there was a crisis at the border with families seeking asylum and being split apart. And the children and the parents were being split apart.
I can't hear it, I guess.
Started talking about that on Facebook.
So it's not over the.
My name is Leslie Hatchgale, and I live in the United States, right in the middle, somewhere outside of Chicago, Illinois. And my story is a.
You can do it live. You did that a couple of times already.
And previously, the other stories, if you go look at them, they're written. There's a form that you can type and submit a story if you're not comfortable being on video. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah.
Which we can't hear?
Okay.
Why not?
Model for you, what you can do.
So say your name and where you're from. So I'm Leslie Hatchgale. I'm from Chicago and right in the middle of the United States. And the story that I shared from my own community started in 2018 when there was a crisis at the border where families were being separated, children and families seeking asylum were being separated. And some women in my community were horrified by that and started talking about it on Facebook, which doesn't do much, right? You're just writing. But the admin of the Facebook group said it was too political and they couldn't talk about it in the group. And if they wanted to talk about it, they should make their own group. And one woman was quite fired up and she said, fine, I will go start my own group so we can talk about this because I don't know what to do and it's upsetting me. So she went that night and she created a Facebook group, didn't know what to call it, and settled on a statistic that she had heard that there was 6,000 moms in the area and decided that will be the name of the group because we're going to harness the power of 6,000 moms and do something. I don't know what we'll do. So she started the group and I was aware of it and joined the group. And so I got to see all this happen and participate a little bit. And so all we really did at the beginning was start sharing the news, sharing this article, sharing that article, which again, isn't really doing anything. Does anyone know where we can contribute money? No, oh, this is reputable, and just grabbing at anything. And then someone found out that a family had been reunited and we're living a family of 5 on a mattress in a room at a relative's place, but it was an unsafe situation in Chicago. And someone in the group said, wow, that's so close to us. Maybe there's something that we can do for this family. We don't know what. So phone calls were made and they posted it to the group, and with permission posted a photo of the family. And within 10 minutes, a woman in our community said they can come live with me. And she had room in her home. And other people were like, well, let us know what they need. Let us know what we can do. And at first it just seemed like, you know, women kind of sharing food and those things. But over time, because we felt personally connected to the family, more and more ideas came up. Then more and more people found out. And we got a lawyer involved. Someone knew a lawyer, an advocate, to help them navigate the court process, because it's going to take several years. And they stayed with this family for 6 months. Someone got the idea, you know, do they need help? Does he need work? And so explored what kind of work he could do. What could we do for him, helping him find the dad find money and getting the kids enrolled in school, because that process is complicated. And to fast forward to what ended up happening was mostly we just did whatever the family needed, rather than us coming in and telling them, oh, here, we'll just give you money. Whatever, even babysitting, I did that once while they took the oldest son to the dentist. And they ended up being able to do that for several other families. And after about 2 years, someone got the idea to become a not-for-profit. And now they're a functioning 501c3, 6,000 moms, building up families, tearing down walls. And you can contribute money. There's still a very robust Facebook group. It's a private group. It's only women. And they share pictures of the different things going on with the different families with permission. Sometimes they show the back of a child's head, but the photos make people feel very connected to what's happening. They have their own Facebook marketplace within the group. So if someone has a dresser to sell or a table, all the proceeds go back into the group. And they most recently helped a family a refugee family from Ukraine. So it is really taken on a life of its own. And that's the idea of this transformative story that we're talking about here.
Yes, that's the kind of story we are looking for. There may be smaller stories, there may be bigger stories, so whatever. And it's most of the time it starts with a small move, with a kind of a, you know, spark, right? And then it transforms part of the community. And that's the interesting part we are looking for. And it's most of the time, it always consists of a implicit knowledge or tacit knowledge within the community. So it's very rare that professionals come in and say, okay, we have a good idea and we have a project and things like that to transform, but it's starting from the community, from scratch most of the time. And that's the type of stories we're looking for. So we invite you to, if you have a story in mind, and Leslie did a storytelling guide on the back of this leaflet you may have already, hopefully. So it's what we're asking is just introduce yourself, introduce the topic, tell us what has been done, what was the outcome, and maybe what was the special thing, or did you already identify what was special about the story? That's it. Takes 3 minutes, maybe. And if you are ready to do that, you can put you on a list if you're not ready right now. But if you're ready right now, we have our professional recorder. So thanks to you to do that for us. And so we can record some stories, and you get it before we publish it. You get it first, and you can say, oh no, I don't, this is not a good look, and I need to redress or something like that. Okay, questions, comments, additions, maybe from Leslie and from you, from Brad and Monica.
this hybrid thing is not very comfortable. Anyway, something's been on my mind, although it sounds really nice. I think in the, I work in the United Kingdom, which is a very capitalist and neoliberal country. And resilience is something that becoming sort of attracting negative connotations because the government just wants people to get on with it. The problem is fixated in the individual, and you need to move people out of this lazy sort of state and get people to work and contribute to the economy. And part of this movement is to create resilience within the people. So resilience for me is not necessarily a very comfortable word anymore, because there is this influence in the Western sort of world now to try and get people to fix the problems that isn't really theirs, but it's located in them. Resistance is another word that I think could join with your project. So I just wonder how you manage this new meaning or new connotation with resilience. So
We don't manage it all, but we try to. That is one of the background goals in a way, which we did in the pre-conference workshop already. We try to develop. Oh yeah, sorry. We try to develop something like a new understanding of community resilience. We know there are a lot of professional or academic definitions about individual resilience, community resilience. There are very few studies around, but I think that the idea is by listening to stories and collecting stories, you get slowly and step by step, you evolve something like an understanding emerges. And that's basically the idea. So it's not having a definition and then we looking for stories who fit to that definition. Any more?
Just to further, I mean, in our conversations, I brought up that very same thing about resilience, and we did have a very nice full-day workshop on resilience and redefined it in a number of ways, because exactly as you're describing, it is problematic. And I think I also suggested that we add resistance to resilience. So that is a great point, but I do think that, I mean, these stories, so for instance, in Julian Rappaport's Tales of Terror and Joy, he talks about individual stories and community narratives. And we are kind of looking at these higher, broader levels of solidarity that are occurring, as opposed to single individuals who are doing something. So single individuals will give money. I mean, that's not really the kind of story we're looking for. We're looking for people who, from a grassroots perspective, typically came together to do something transformative. But yeah, that critique of the term resilience is well taken. So thank you.
And as I said already, sometimes it starts from sparks from individuals as well. But not all individuals are starting a kind of a process which is kind of dynamic and spreading in a way. And that's it's also interesting to find out about the reasons. But it's a very how can I tell that? It's a very intuitive way of research we're trying to do. And that's the fun part, I guess, at least for me. So it's really interesting to see how it emerges. So who's ready to tell a story? Yeah. Are you ready to be recorded? Okay. Wait a minute. Yeah.
And because it's on Zoom, I thought I would just stand here where the people can see me. Is this okay?
Oh yeah.
I just have to go like this. Is that better? So you can tell me, am I in frame?
Let's give it a try, and then we may try it.
I'm Doug Perkins. I am a professor in community research and action at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, USA. And the story I will tell briefly because it's on my mind. I'm going to be presenting in the next hour related to the same project. It began, and I saw Scott Evans, a former PhD student of ours. He would have been in Nashville when the beginning of this started. It has to do with Islamophobia in America and generally, but it's specifically in Tennessee, which is a very conservative part of America. America's conservative to begin with, so this is really, really conservative. But the city of Nashville is actually progressive, as is the university where I teach. And what was happening, this is now 10, 15 years ago, were actual incidents of violence against Muslims, in particular mosques. One that was being built was bombed, and as it was being built, so sort of destroyed, and they ultimately were able to build it, thank goodness. In another case, that was just outside of Nashville, in my city of Nashville, an existing mosque was vandalized and spray painted with Nazi symbols and stuff like that. And in response to this, I attended a meeting, a kind of community meeting, where it was being led by a Palestinian American who was not a community psychologist. He was sort of a health manager locally, but concerned about this wave of Islamophobia and violence against Muslims. And he wanted to start an organization. So I volunteered to basically serve as a volunteer sort of evaluation researcher for his organization. And the first big project they came up with, and maybe still to this day is the most successful one, was called A Seat at the Table. And it was to bring Muslims and Christians and Jews and non-believers, anyone together for dinners and kind of guided but informal conversation, interfaith dialogue. And it's been, I think, quite successful. But as far as lessons are concerned, I would say a couple of things. One is that it's important to know who the target audience or participants are. It was, the program was started in reaction to this terrible violence, as I talked about. These people who commit such acts, I think, are probably in most cases, maybe you can disagree with this, but I think they're difficult, if not impossible, to change, to reach, to listen. And so my Palestinian friend who started the organization, he talks about the movable middle. And he knows that the danger with interfaith kinds of efforts and dialogue is the problem we call preaching to the choir, people who are already, think like you and are sympathetic. He wants, to include them, but he especially wants to reach this movable middle he talks about. These are people who just lack experience with Muslims, for example, who just don't have Muslim friends, or they don't realize they, maybe are co-workers with Muslims. And to bring them together just to break down barriers and to learn from each other. And I think that has really led to this program being as popular as it became. The other lesson is, though, the organization is not completely dead, but it had a grant, and the grant, completed. And so a lesson about continuing efforts to, not rely on grant funding, but to do what you can to make things last on a volunteer basis if necessary. But ultimately, maybe it's not such a tragedy if these volunteer efforts sort of become dormant. I won't say dead, but become dormant until there's a need to revitalize. And we've seen that happen as well. So this is my story.
Thank you very much. That's great. So what we usually would ask for in order to put it on the website, and of course we ask for your permission, is do you have a picture or a photo which is kind of representing the project? And do you have a link or something like that? Or it can be a link to a report as well, so it's something like that. Yeah, okay, great. So if you send it to us, that would be great. Yeah, there's the thing on there. Okay, can I have the problem that I have to move to another meeting. They're waiting for me already. Can I hand over to you and to? I have another session. You do too. But I can stay. I was needed at that session.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll carry on, really. We're at the storytelling portion, and we can do it as long as you're interested. If someone else has a story, then come on up. Or if you'd rather do a story out in the hall privately, then Sam can take you out there. Otherwise, we can conclude. Maybe.
Was it in 200? Was it in 2016 when all the refugees come from Syria? Sorry, that came from Syria to Germany over Austria, and that were open borders. And so we had a lot of refugees coming within 2 weeks, and there were thousands coming. And there were a lot of volunteering work for helping them, and because they were crowded in the station and everywhere. And so, maybe the words our former chancellor said by that time, "Wir schaffen das." I don't know whether you heard that, because it went around the world. Wir schaffen das. She was very clear that we managed it. It was what it was. It was what it's supposed to be. And I worked by that time. I'm always still working with NGO, with migrant organization. And by that time, there was one organization that just formed by students that were volunteering in this situation. And they started an initiative for cooking. And I think it's something similar that what you said for dinner, but it was cooking for the people who live in Munich, but the cooking was done by the Syrian or Iraqi or whatever refugees where they come from, and they were supposed to think about their favorite meal. So we went to buy the stuff, the ingredients for the meal. And the meal was served and was cooked and served in a center, an education center for grown-up people. And they had a very well kitchen, a very good kitchen, which was all you need. So we were starting cooking there, and the Iraqi or Syrian and people, they cooked the meal, their favorite meal, and it was with various menus, also dessert and everything. And also the family were coming. And so it were so many people coming from outside, and it was free, and you could put as much money as you wish to live there. And they started to communicate to each other. So it was maybe 3, 5, or 6 different nations, and they were talking to each other in this situation of cooking and afterwards eating. And so we had a very good, I think it was helping a lot to build a trusty situation with which people connected, and also that you gave up prejudice and those things, you know, that you have before. And this is still going on, and the initiative is called I don't know whether you know the saying, looking over your plate, looking over the edge of your plate. But this means eating over the edge of the plate. It is called über den Tellerrand essen. It is in German, but it means eating over the edge of the plate. So that means that you open your mind and you be open to other cultures. And this was a perfect initiative, and it's still going on. And they're very successful. They rented, and I think they even bought a truck, and they go around several cities in Europe even, and to make this kind of event for cooking and bringing people together that live there in the town. It's also in Marseille, and it was all in other cities, Amsterdam, and so on, also in some cities in Germany. And they were preparing a movie about that, a documentary, and it's different, the different attitude of the people from France or from Belgium or from Germany, how they should approach to this kind of initiative. Sometimes they were very, vorsichtig. I mean, they were very, they did not like to go. Yeah, they did not like to go immediately, but after a while, you know, so it was a good situation how to get into contact with refugee people from this parts of the world, which is not our world, because it's like they have another, you know, they come from, they're Muslim people, and it is also the same conflicts that we have, as you said. Thank you.
Hello. Is this on? Okay. Hi, my name is Amanda. This is, I'm telling a story, but it's a shared story. So I wanted to emphasize that I'm one piece of a much bigger, I guess, puzzle. We would probably all go with that. I'd have to check. But when I was an academician for quite some time, mostly in Latin America and the Caribbean, and then had the opportunity to move to the United States and work in international affairs, which I found very exciting. So this was very new to me. I'm not an organizational psychologist. I had no idea how to manage people. I focus on children, which are so much more delightful, really, at the end of the day than adults. And I look myself in the mirror on that one. But when I started my position, and I'm at the American Psychological Association, I became, because my focus, the place I've lived most years besides, my original home in my life is in Latin America, that the organization had a lot of conversations across the Atlantic toward Europe, but really wasn't thinking globally. That international is a thing, but global is a different thing. And so on a hope and a prayer, as the saying goes, reached out to any partners that our association had over time. And then I guess hosting is probably the best way to describe it. But it was supported by my all the people with more power than I have for the APA to co-host the first meeting it had ever held. This is big, I think. I'm sort of shocked still, outside of the United States in 2019. And the idea was to bring as many psychologists from as many diverse parts of the world as we possibly could together to talk, to argue, to share, to find a way forward that's was relevant to specific contexts and also meaningful at a human kind of humanity level. So in 2019, about 50 of us met from all over the world. The truth is, I was mostly the secretary and I ran around and trying to organize things. I didn't actually get to sit but that group of people, and then COVID happened. So we decided, like, let's find a way to work together, no matter how different our experiences or our perspectives, to bring that all to the table as a team, a global team, and listen to what we each need, support one another, and support this broader aim to create change on critical issues: global health, global mental health, climate, and equity and justice. So COVID hit, we became a Zoom group. We have meetings, which for me were late at night, to be sure that we accommodated time zones across the world, and some that were regular schedule, but people kept coming and coming from psychologists from around the world. And it's, in a lot of ways, we've become a family. So when our Sri Lankan colleague said what's critical in her current context is to highlight what's unique about psychology, because the government doesn't recognize psychology at all. Or when our Nicaraguan colleagues shared that, and actually our Ukrainian colleagues developed this, it's being adapted and evaluated in Nicaragua, but that there are some very real repercussions for their big storms and their, how can they think about mitigation and adaptation, that it became like a network of all of us sharing with one another, learning from one another, supporting with human resources. There's actually no money, but wherever we can find some financial resources to develop a global community of psychologists that shares what we know and listens to what others know in other parts of the world, and try to learn from one another and grow with one another. And that I actually thought would be a relatively short-term engagement. It continues to date, and there is a student component. So each representative and their organizational representatives, sometimes self-determined, sometimes selected, that each organization then received applications from students who are interested in developing global networks, learning from one another globally, and creating this conversation from very early in their studies, so that they could continue to listen, learn, think, and develop kind of big picture approaches that also take into consideration very local contexts. So COVID, around the world, many countries saw an increase in home-based violence. And one thing that we did and was adapted and translated inclusive into 3 indigenous languages from Ecuador, Guatemala, and Peru was a joint kind of a practical approach that then had space for each particular group to share. Here is what is available. If you are in a situation you need to get support from, this is what the Colombian government has put into place. You go to the store and you ask for a particular prescription, or in South Africa or in Belgium. And it's kind of continued along those lines, where we're always trying to think big. What do we share as human beings from very distinct communities, and support each other in our immediate local contexts. And it's been, I think, it's a horizontal leadership model. There's no one person in charge. It's kind of the anti-psychology organization, or the anti-organization psychology organization, for which actually we've gotten a lot of pushback, but everyone is so committed and dedicated that, yeah, we keep trying to move forward and finding ways where we can come together across distinct perspectives, but in support of, I think, all of our communities. So thank you. It's actually kind of fun. Just sort of tell us a story that's on your mind, or.
All very exciting, and all have just kind of great. Those were all great stories, and spontaneous, but also transformative. I mean, the dialogue, the sense that something just wasn't right, and sometimes funding comes, sometimes it doesn't come, sometimes it grows, but all of those are that's exactly what we're looking for. So thank you so much. Yay. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll be around. Definitely. Thank you.